Best greetings and very warm welcome to this Tuesday talk on a special subject of projecting into the future. My name is Sarah, connecting from Cambridge, and I think for some it may be good afternoon, maybe good morning. It would be great to hear if you could share in the chat where you're connecting from, and also feel free to come into camera and share also your thoughts on this subject. It's a meeting, it's like a fireside chat, you could say, and your thoughts and questions are very warmly welcome. So this is the format, it's dialogue, it's discussion, and I just want to share this quote by Niels Bohr: prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. And he's a Danish physicist. And also, maybe to add to that, this quote by Peter Drucker, he's an Austrian-American author. He said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So maybe we need to have it in our hands. And one aspect of spiritual intelligence is to be led by a vision of the future rather than by the past. So I feel this is a fascinating area, and this topic can be taken in many ways. We're going to be hearing from Ioana Goga, who's originally from Romania and currently based in Cambridge. And her background is in computer science and psychology, and has been studying Raj Yoga meditation since 2009. And also we are joined by Ash Patel, based in Worthing, and his background is in leadership and the IT services sector. They're responsible for relationship development and has been associated with meditation philosophy with Brahma Kumaris for more than 20 years, and enjoys working and connecting with young adults in leadership principles. And so we are really happy to have this opportunity to hear from you both. So I think I'd like to invite Ioana first to share her initial thoughts on this subject in any way you wish to pick it up. It's a very open topic. So warm welcome and good evening first to Ioana.
Hello, and thank you for the kind introduction, Sarah. And of course, I'm honored and pleased to be here tonight. It's a beautiful subject, and just understanding that projecting into the future can be done at the individual level and also collectively. And it's a collective level. The society, governments, our communities are trying to project into the future and creating plans, and are the famous 5 years plans that have been introduced at the beginning of the last century. And that is one way of looking at what can we do. And when we look at what society does, we can see that such a projection can be limited. It is based on limited knowledge, limited information, limited vision. And in many occasions, it can offer something that is not based on truth. It may not be realistical, it may not be practical. And many times such projections are actually serving the aims of those who are creating them. And they may just want you to buy into it or to vote for it. So we are aware of the limitations that exist maybe in today's world in creating these projections at a collective level. And then at the individual level, to understand my future, first of all, I have to understand my present. And to understand the present, I need to have a good relationship with myself. to understand myself through all the aspects. And those aspects of the self are related to physical aspects, mental, emotional, spiritual aspects, and definitely social aspects. If we are able to understand ourselves at the present moment through all these aspects, then we can definitely have the option, the possibility to project into the future. And what really helps us is what we call in spirituality the voice of conscience. Voice of conscience is our intellect, it's our reasoning. And this voice of conscience tells me what is right and what is wrong, what is real and what is false, what is accepted and what can be done for my own good and for the good of many others. And if I listen to the voice of conscience, then I will become stronger in my principles. And I will feel that I stick with my principles and I am true to myself. When you don't listen to the voice of conscience, it just becomes weaker and weaker, and it won't speak to you anymore. And you feel like you have lost a good friend. And now you have to rely on others telling you what is right and what is wrong. And you may rely on social media, on television, on other leaders. And that will make you feel weak and in the position that others can tell you what you do with your life. And instead of you projecting your life for the future, it will be someone else that will give a purpose or an aim. And most of the people today would probably follow a trajectory that has been led by others for them. So to be able to return to that strong voice of conscience and to know what is my own purpose, I would say we need a strategy. Like the government that puts a 5-year plan into action, they do it with a strategy. Here as well, there is a strategy that has 3 aspects. And I would give the acronym of that as Sukh. And Sukh means happiness in Hindi. And it stands for S, which is self, U, which is universal, and K from karma. So a strategy for me to listen to that voice of conscience and to be able to be strong enough to understand my present and forecast a good future starts with understanding the self. And understanding the self leads me to what I would see as being part of universal truth. Whatever I understand about the self will be applicable to others and will also allow me to study, to be part of a university, to share what I have understood with others, and also to be able to take on board of what others have understood, because truth is universal. And then eventually we can't really think about the future unless we understand the consequences of our actions, and that would be karma. So our strategy for forecasting the future, for projecting into the future, would be based on self, a universal university, and karma, the law, the consequences of action. And I wonder if I should stop here. Would that be a good time to stop?
Well, I think it feels like you have a lot to share on this, and so in one sense, would love to listen more. But maybe we pause there, and we can come back to some of these ideas. When you were speaking about this, we need to be creators. It's Jack Welch. He is an American businessman. He said, "Control your own destiny, or someone else will." So this is we can't be passive in this. It's like create or be created. And aspect of karma, it would be nice to come back to this. So yeah, we can now maybe come to Ash and see what's coming up for you on this subject. And a very warm welcome. I think by the sea, probably quite windy.
It's just down, and I was pleased to hear. I thank you firstly for the invitation to be joining you on this wonderful topic. I was intrigued when I first got the topic through, and I was hoping I wasn't going to share first. I was hoping that Ioana would share on this topic. So it was really lovely just to hear some of the ideas being shared by Ioana in terms of collective and individual projection. And I had similar thoughts that kind of interwove with what Ioana was sharing, particularly remembering kind of an extract from Wayne Dyer's book. And one of the things he'd mentioned was he calls the law of attraction. He uses the concept of the law of attraction, and describes it as, there was a certain period in time when a lot of people would misuse this law of attraction by trying to demand things, trying to draw things that are at a very materialistic level. And one of the things that he made very clear was the law of attraction. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. And I feel that this really dovetails very nicely into what Ioana was sharing, particularly around awakening the conscience and connecting with universal truth. Because at a time when we feel in the world around us, there is perhaps an incredible loss of values and virtues, this is something that universally is really available in our own lives. And I know this from my own journey. The more I have connected with my own qualities and virtues in this present moment and deeply nurtured these qualities until they've become a natural part of me, then essentially I begin to project what I am. And I feel for me that, connected to what Ioana was sharing about really being in this present moment, the effort then really becomes about maintaining and connecting my own inner core values based on my own truth. And as that becomes more and more of a reality in my actions, on my day-to-day actions, in me living my truth, in the way I interact with others, in the way I deal with situations, then actually my very being is vibrating a certain frequency, because all of these virtues are expressed through attitude. And attitude, that I learned a lot more about this word attitude when I started learning about Raja Yoga meditation, particularly that attitude is vibration, and it is vibration that creates the atmosphere, and it is vibration that we tend to connect with as human beings. A lot of our interaction with other humans is on the basis of vibration before we've even expressed ourselves. And so if 90% of our interaction is non-verbal at a vibrational level, then we are attracting the responses based on those vibrations. And so I really feel that this aspect of projection is really connected with virtue and being aligned with truth, knowing myself, realizing myself, and slowly becoming myself. And I think for me on my journey, I've had to lose myself to find myself. I think that's probably one way I can see my journey, because it was important for me to go through that process, however I needed to go through it, to discover myself, to discover the false ego, to discover the many faces of ego that were established even when I started on a spiritual journey. And then as those layers of ego were stripped back and slowly revealing this core of virtues and specialities that I didn't even realize I had, I could see that with those values and virtues, I could manifest different situations and project into the future. So I just wanted to pause there and perhaps just open the floor to Ioana, really, because I really liked this acronym. She had spoken very much about Sukh, and Sukh is happiness. You know, it's a really wonderful term. Very short. There are many words for happiness in the Hindi language, but Sukh is one of the more beautiful words that we can use. And I like the way that you've broken it down into self, universal truth, and karma, because it's a clear approach and a clear framework. And I just wondered whether you could share any particular examples of how this framework has helped in different situations in your life, or how kind of embedding this framework in your life has helped kind of enable you to project, or maybe even not allow your past to pollute your future in some ways. So it'd be great to hear a bit more on that topic based on specific scenarios that you'd like to share.
Yes, thank you, Ash. So I will continue now, or Sarah will say something.
No, please go ahead. I'll only chip in if I think I have a point to make, but this is I'm all ears.
Okay. Yes, so let's come back to this Sukh model, and I'll give you an example of an outstanding vision. In the 1960s in India, after a very special partition and after a very special time of a big upheaval, in a period when there were revolutions and youth were on the streets, and there was a big famine in 1965. After a big drought in 1964, there was no water and there were no cereals, and Mumbai in particular was in great famine. And there was this small community of yogis that were studying this universal truth. And in the midst of all this famine, no water, rebellions after the separation, they were teaching one principle for life. And that principle was, no matter what happens to you, no matter where you are, and no matter what will come to you, don't give sorrow to anyone. Make sure that whatever you do, whatever you say, whatever you think will not upset anyone, because people already have lots of problems, and no one is willing to give them any more of that problem or burden. So this is one example of seeing how applying the principles of knowing yourself, studying, being part of that universal endeavor to know ourselves and to help ourselves and help others, and also understanding the consequences of our karma. The resulting principle is never give sorrow to anyone at any cost. We don't need anything from anyone, and we don't have to take anything from anyone. And definitely we don't need to give some sorrow to someone. Now, how do we reach to this position? We experience this self that you are talking about, and coming into the position of this living, conscious, tiny being that is a true self. And when I am in that position of the one that is alive, then I am not manipulated by anyone else. I am not forced into any compromise or any position that will hurt me or someone else. I am able to be truthful to the self and to listen to that voice of conscious. So you are not corrupted by anything that anyone can do. You cannot be bought or you cannot be broken into pieces by anything. And that is from the position of the living, conscious, tiny, true self. And it is tiny, meaning that all this expansion that exists around us, around our role and story and what happens, is just an expansion around that tiny, living, conscious being, true self. And from the position of the true self, I can start to make sense of what life is. I start to make sense of what humanity is. I start to understand myself and to understand life. And I may not be able to change immediately. I may not be able to help someone else immediately, but at least I can start to understand what is happening to myself, to make sense of it. And when that happens from that position, I start to see the past, the present, and the future as being connected. And I start to see the continuity in the life of this true self. What has been, the past becomes the present, and the present becomes the future, and the future becomes the past. And we see how from this position, only from the position of using the voice of conscious, using the intellect and seeing the living conscious being, we understand how our past will become our future, how what we have been, we will become again. So that kind of projection into the future starts to become almost as if part of your life. It is natural. You understand yourself as a being that is in a longer journey, that is seeing continuity in their journey, and is able to share that with others in a natural way.
It feels like this far-sighted view, and I can relate to this when coming across spiritual ideas. I got this glimpse of how I felt as a child, and as if got connected to something that I felt was it was like beyond the ordinary everyday experiences, but something of the spirit. So this connection with this true self is so reassuring. But at the same time, I'm aware, and I also experienced, we identify so much with our story and our actions and the things that we've said and done, and that often gets dragged into the future if we haven't got this long view. And so it feels like we need a reset somewhere. I wonder if Ash has any experiences you'd like to share on how you maybe have also connected to this true self, and any comments you have on what Ioana was sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think that's been really insightful. I really I was drawn to this principle Ioana was sharing, which I guess is probably the number one principle in spiritual living, which is to not give sorrow, but to not take sorrow as well. And this is an interesting principle because it shows the connection between our limited story and how we begin to take a lot of sorrow from the experiences that define our limited story. And, you know, all the way from childhood to adulthood, the experiences that we carry in this birth create that story. And one of the things that I've practically realized for myself is how these patterns have been created within my subconscious mind as a result of each of these experiences. So a scene may come and I may have absorbed negative feelings and beliefs about myself in that scene at a particular point in my life. And that, of course, is much more stronger as an imprint when you are in a younger body, when you are a child, than when you are much older, when you've had the opportunity to use wisdom, when you can have logical discernment, when you can use the discerning intellect. And unfortunately, as little children, we can find ourselves absorbing a lot from the world around us, and experiences we can internalize. And I think for a lot of us, we can probably find that we have had many situations in our life that have created moments of trauma, where there are strong memories and experiences that have shaped our journey since childhood. And that's the past following us around. And the past continues to sit with us in the form of the beliefs that I carry, in the form of the feelings that reside in my subconscious, my deep subconscious. And whilst the scene may have passed, those feelings get triggered in the present moment. And so when we're trapped in this limited story of the ego, then situations that come in front of us tend to trigger what's in our subconscious and emerge those uncomfortable feelings. And often that's when we have internal reactions, I guess, and that's when we begin to take sorrow from our past without even realizing it. And so the connection between the past and the present and the future is so interwoven, because until I can address those feelings and forgive myself and release them, the past will always follow me around. And then the future will seem to repeat again and again. So if I find myself, someone has hurt me in the past, then I will find that will keep coming back into my present relationships, because there'll be some fear of being hurt. And I may not trust other people as a result of that. And I may find that other people are hurting me as a result of those belief systems. So the pain keeps coming back in the present moment, and I worry about what is to come in the future. And so in this way, I feel that taking sorrow can become very, very easy for us. And I only heard about this concept of taking sorrow, this idea of taking sorrow, when I was in the Brahma Kumaris. You know, before you know that giving sorrow is a very bad thing, right? It's going to hurt other people, it's going to hurt yourself. But to take sorrow is a different thing. And this is where its connection with the real self comes into play, I feel, where when we truly realize and recognize ourselves to be this point of light, this very subtle consciousness, and that there is the purity to this consciousness, and that our core virtues and values are only those of goodness, then anything that distorts the energy of my true state of peace, of love, of joy, of purity, wisdom, kindness, is basically untrue. And so if anything distorts my peace, then I'm breaking my feelings. I'm coming into feelings, and that is bringing the soul down. And the soul in its truest form, when I've experienced, in meditation, is one of lightness, is one where there is absolute lightness and freedom. And when the ego, and when we're bogged down by situations and contained by our past, that's when we come into heaviness. And so this contrast between true self and untrue self becomes very evident when there is heaviness and when there is lightness present. And so healing can only take place when I'm able to observe myself and see the self and spend time with the self to get to know the self. And through that observation, there can be the awareness of truth. I can become honest with myself without judgment. And I have to say, in my journey, self-judgment has played a significant part to coming closer to this aspect of observation and connecting to good wishes. Because, you know, without the power of good wishes, we can't really move forward. We can't change situations in our lives. We can't help others. And what traps us, or what blocks my compassion, has certainly been judgment. Self-judgment has played a big role in blocking my own compassion and blocking my ability to give good wishes as well. And it's funny, this aspect of good wishes, which is very deeply connected with the true self, when there is this internal state of cleanliness, when there is no heavy feelings, feelings of bitterness, of anger, of hate, then I will find myself being open-hearted. I will find myself wanting to share vibrations from a pure space. And that pure giving, which will happen, is good wishes. When I'm directing that towards somebody, I'm projecting into the future for somebody with an open heart through virtues. And that then begins to manifest for them. That then begins to manifest for myself. So I just wanted to share those thoughts that were coming to my mind in connection to what's being shared so far. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and sharing also your personal experience and insights into these two sides. I wonder if Ioana would like to share your understanding insights into true self and this false identification, and how it plays a part in how we move forward and make sure that we are aligned with our truth and creating the future which is going to be beneficial for ourselves and others.
Yes. Just seeing a little bit our ability to predict or to project into the future is being less subjective. And for instance, one example, in 1985, they created the first laptop. And there was a big reaction in the newspaper saying, very soon after that, who would need that? What is the point? And who would actually carry with them a computer when they would very well be reading the sports or the business page in the newspaper? We definitely don't need that. And General Ford was saying, if I would have been to create what people really asked me to create, I would have not been creating the first car. I would have created a chariot driven by 12 horses, because this is what everyone was telling me, that that's what they want. So people have a certain vision at a certain point in time, and they may be limited by their own beliefs. And as we discussed, the collective perception can be very limited. To be able to go beyond that, if we understand about the self, and if we understand about this universal truth that we can share with others, we also need to understand about the consequences of our action, about the consequences of our karma. And we don't always take into account what is happening right now as we speak here, as we are gathering, will have an impact, and not only in the community where we are, but it can have an impact at the global level. And we sometimes give this example, a very simple story, but it illustrates a conviction of on how our action can have an impact in the world. And this is a story that a businessman was relating in the years, the 80s in the United States. He knew of a bank that was open for children. Children could come and apply to get some funds. And he was telling the story of a boy named Billy who applied with a project. He wanted to print stickers that are displayed on the back of a car. And on that sticker would be said, peace in the world, do it for the children. So create peace, do it for the children. And he asked for $5,000 to print these stickers, and the bank gave him this money. Now, this was a little bit before 1989, and after, in 1991, the same boy, who was at that time was about 9 years old, and now he was slightly older, was interviewed by a German company. And in that interview, the lady was a little bit cautious. She said, Billy, I really don't believe that it's possible that you really had an impact with all your stickers. And can you truly believe that you can bring peace in the world with such a simple action? And the 13 years old boy said, the Cold War between Russia and America stopped, and the wall in Berlin has been demolished. So I think I'm doing very well. Don't you think so? It is a true story, and it can be our story if we start to realize the consequences of our actions. We have the option either to have that vision. What's the point of having a laptop? What's the point of having a computer? Even the light bulb was criticized when it was invented by Edison. They said this is not required and it will never going to work. The same as a car. They said cars will always be too expensive to be affordable. So who needs that cars? We can have either that vision, the vision of nothing can work, and what's the point for me to engage with anything in my life or the life of the community, and that will create a certain future for myself and for others. Or we can have the other vision. Both are in our hands. The other vision is, yes, I'm doing very well. I'm creating peace in the world. So that is also a matter of the quality of my thinking, that true self, that living, conscious, tiny true self is capable of any quality of thinking. It can be either this one, negative one, or pessimistic one, or it can be this one, optimistic or positive or full of confidence, and truly understanding that whatever action I do today, whether it is to withdraw or to reject or to oppose, or whether it is to take some initiative, no matter how small it is, it will have a large impact.
I think these stories are very, very powerful, and even the computer itself before the laptop. So probably many stories. So what is for ourselves thinking today? What is it that we need to have some insight, and certainly starting with our own conviction for a vision of the future, I'm going to come over to Ash. Any thoughts you have on what Ioana shared, but also in the chat, there's a question, statement you could relate to the self-judgment that you mentioned. What powers and virtues did you use to overcome this self-criticism? So any thoughts on what Ioana said and any comments on this self-criticism would be great.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think the sharing that Ioana keeps coming back to really points back to knowing and realizing the self. And I feel, for me, that is so connected with understanding myself as I am today, and also understanding myself in my original form and experiencing that. And, you know, I think when we do both, it becomes very helpful to see where my ego is beginning to trip me up constantly and repeatedly and taking me away from my original and true self. And I guess this is linked also to the question that's in the chat. I guess one of the practices that I've taken very seriously at the Brahma Kumaris is releasing, consciously applying myself to release myself from the burdens of past memories, because it is these past memories that hold me to ego. It's my attachment to these memories that hold me and connect me to ego, which means I can't realize myself until I have done that work. And each time and each phase where I've cleaned up, you know, discovered aspects of my past and released the burden of the past. I'm not saying I'm releasing the scene, because the scene and the memory of that scene will exist, but I'm releasing what I'm holding from that scene. That has created burden and heaviness in the heart that doesn't allow there to be lightness. And each time I've done that, I've also then purged any self-judgment that goes with that, and there has been lightness in the soul. The soul has been able to feel like it can move forward freely with a new slate. And I felt like this practice I probably stumbled across by accident, more than somebody sat me down and consciously said that I should do it this way. But I then began to see that actually this was a really important part of spiritual growth, and particularly because it requires us to introspect ourselves, you know, this ability to move into from a space of extroversion into a space of introversion, where I can be with myself with a loving, gentle, open heart and begin to observe myself without judgment. And I know for myself that where there was judgment present, I just wasn't able to be truly detached in a way that allowed me to observe myself without emotion, and to be able to see all of these things as clearly as they were coming up was incredibly liberating, because it allowed me to truly embrace myself for where I was at in the journey, but recognize also that I am becoming freer and lighter as a result of seeing and releasing away from this. And, you know, when I was trapped in self-criticism and self-judgment, it was always pointing back for me to past situations that I kept holding on to, that had shaped the way I saw myself, the way I would think about myself, the attitude I would have towards myself, even the words I would use towards myself. And each time, through each phase of my life, as I began, and I'm still clearing today, big chunks, and I'm talking big things have come up for me, traumas have come up for me that I've been able to release away from. I've taken a new wave of life. There's been a feeling of starting again. There's been newness that's emerged from it. So I feel this connection between releasing old and attracting new is just interconnected, because every time I have sought to project into the future with heaviness from my past? Not possible. I have never been able to create newness from that space. But each time I've released the past, newness has come to me naturally. And I remember the amount of retreats that we've run over the years at the Oxford Retreat Centre, where we've taken and guided groups through a process of releasing past memories and the burdens that they carry from past memories. And often we would see, and actually almost every group, we would see a significant portion of people shift old energy. And then a few months down the line, we would receive emails from them telling us how much newness has kind of just appeared in their lives, how much the train of their fresh thinking with conviction has created change, where they've really been able to create the future that they've wanted in very positive ways. So it shows me this connection between releasing old patterns of old burdens with old patterns of thinking about the self and attracting new beginnings as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your process, and it definitely comes back here for this intelligence to not be dictated by the circumstances and situations of the past, but be led by a vision of the future, and this empowers and creates a new energy, and the newness is so uplifting. Even we get glimpses of a new way of thinking, and that moment is like a new birth. I would like to, Sana's typed, thank you for the answer, very helpful. Now, I like this quote. This is an American clergyman, Mike Murdoch. And he said, "The secret of your future is hidden in your daily routine." So bringing it back to something very, very simple, very practical. And I would like to hear from Ioana if you have experimented with daily routine to create this this future, which is where we're living in honor of our truth, and any practical tips you have for a routine, and what works for you.
Thank you. Yes, as described in this acronym SOOK, starting with attention to the self. If it is possible to create early in the morning a few minutes when we are paying attention to that living, conscious, tiny point of life, the essence of life that we are, and then following with study, so universal truth in a university, paying attention every day as much as possible to the spiritual knowledge, and understanding it, sharing it with others, listening from others. That is what a student would do in his life. So the day would be marked by being either a child with the company of the Supreme, either a student, either teacher or an employee. So going into that vision of the day as being in my hands. The future is in our hands, the destiny is in my hands. So throughout the day, paying attention to the karma, to the action that I'm doing and the consequences of that action, being able to create time for study, but also being able to come into accurate action that is done from an awareness of being that true self, action that is done without ego, as you described, and without selfishness or superiority, and also without being influenced by others. A good karma, a high karma, would have a pure motive And there are 4 motives that we can have throughout the day, even every day. One motive can be the livelihood, and we are having the intention to increase the quality of our life. Another motive can be anything that is under the umbrella of devotion, wanting to connect our mind and our intellect with something higher. And each one can do it in their own way, whether it is connecting with something that is spiritual or religious, or a higher figure in our life, or a certain leader, or even in science, they may connect their intellect with something higher. That is the second motive. Another motive can be happiness. We may try to lead our life and our day through karma, through action that will bring us happiness and bring other happiness. But the higher motive, the highest intention can be pure love. When the action that I'm doing throughout the day is motivated by pure, altruistic, selfless love. And that is only possible from the perspective of the true self. And that is only possible when there is a guidance and the partnership with a supreme friend, with divine. So when, again, we are aware of that living, conscious, tiny point of life, in that space, in that perception, we become aware of the presence and the availability of the supreme friend. So this supreme friend, supreme parent, this relationship with the divinity will be able to guide me throughout the day, will be able to help me to take the right action. And that right action done in the right awareness will create the best possible future.
Thank you so much for sharing your own practice and understanding. Maybe I'll come to Ash with the same question. What is the secret that you have in your daily routine that you feel is bringing towards the future that you wish for?
I really like that quote. The secret of your future is hidden in your daily routine. I think the significance of what Ioana was sharing is something that I'd like to emphasize, particularly this connection with the self at the time when the eyes open, and that period in the morning where you can really begin to experience the depth of the inner being through a connection that takes you beyond this physical body. And I feel that meditating at that time of the morning is such a powerful practice to emerge in a strength, but to almost realign the soul back into its true position, if you like. And then followed by a spiritual study of some description, because we can allow the world in as quickly as by simply picking up the phone as soon as our eyes have opened and flicked into the world today. And that creates our emotional diet very quickly. And to stay away from our phones, or to stay away from anything of the world, and to be able to almost think over high vibration words is probably the only description I can describe it with. To uplift the soul, I feel energizes, creates such an energy at the start of your day. And it's not just the significance of meditation and study, it's the significance of meditation and the study at that particular point in the day, which creates a profound impact. The other practice that I have, and I paid attention to, and I know Ioana has and others have in the community, is one of food, and being really conscious of the vibrations and the food that I eat, because that ultimately dictates my thoughts. And I remember a time when I didn't really pay attention to food. I was always vegetarian, but I would spend time eating out and not in a very careless way, and not really sitting down and giving myself that attention and being quiet inside when eating. And the difference in my thoughts was incredible just by that one practice. And I remember speaking to my cousin who actually gave up meat not so long ago. And I said, what made you give up meat? And he said, well, my kids became vegan, so I felt like I needed to try it. But he also then said he noticed a significant difference in violent thoughts being reduced drastically. So there was better control in his own mind. And this is someone who, he hasn't been aware or exposed to, much by way of spiritual teachings or wisdom, but yet he could observe that about himself. The fourth practice, for me, was writing, because inevitably we can, through the course of the day, we will lose this consciousness of the higher self when we start our day with, and we will slip back into ego mode. And this is when we will begin to experience pain and discomfort in situations, relationships, etc. And I often find that writing has really helped me to be able to release things that I have perhaps absorbed that I shouldn't have absorbed, or just acknowledged any emotions and feelings that may have come up, or acknowledged any thoughts that may have come up that weren't aligned to the true self. And this honesty, and it's less the writing, it's more the practice of honesty on a regular basis, that has really helped me connect and stay true to my own heart. And I feel that out of all of the practices, the one practice that I felt that has really helped me progress is writing. And that has helped me connect to my true self. That has allowed me to maintain an open heart and a peaceful mind. And I feel that for me is the essence of being spiritual, is just to be able to have an open heart and to see goodness and quality, and to be able to communicate with each one in non-violence, whilst maintaining peace and self-respect. And so for me, those practical aspects to daily routine have really helped shape my own journey. Yeah.
Oh, it's really nice to hear these things we can put into practice. And I can very much relate personally to the writing, but also I will take on board what you mentioned about eating, because sometimes habit can be to consume information at the same time as food. And, our minds may be moving fast with the things which technology allows us to do at speed, but to really honor those activities and give space so we can pay attention to consciousness. So appreciating that. We've actually come to time, incredibly, an hour went past, but I do just want to ask if it's just as you touched on something, maybe from Ioana, if you have a couple of thoughts on this, that people are consuming information from media, and it creates concern in many ways in the world. When we think of the future, it may be associated with worry. It'd be lovely if you have any thoughts on this, and then after that, perhaps we can hear a few words of meditation to take us into that soul space from Ash. But maybe first, Ioana, are you happy to share anything about, for those who may be thinking of the future and it brings concern?
Are you asking whether people have concerns about the future, what to do about it?
Yes, I think so. Ash brought up this aspect that we may be checking out the media, and that's what we're consuming. We obviously want to come to our lives with strength, but if you have any thoughts on when we think of future, political, social, environmental, it can bring worry. And if you have any thoughts on how to manage that.
Yes, thank you. Maybe first of all, at the present moment, we can reduce a little bit the credibility that we are giving to social media and everything else, and start that digital detox that has been suggested to all of us. It is a good initiative at this moment in time. And in the future, we may be faced at some point with less information, with less knowledge coming from the outer world. So we will have to rely sooner or later on our voice of conscience to understand what we have to do. Whether we take the initiative now and we make that strong, or we wait until there won't be anyone to tell us what to do, I feel it is wise to start to foster that ability to live on my own, to listen to my voice of conscience, and to make that strong. And that is possible through meditation, through connection with the Supreme, a good relationship with the self and with divinity. And when we do that, we become strong again. We can stick with our principles. We are powerful. We cannot be manipulated. We don't make compromises, and we are true to ourselves. And from that position, future is what we have been in the past, what we have been in our original position of peace, love, truth, happiness. This is what we will become. That becomes very obvious to us.
Thank you. A very powerful feeling of security from something which, if we are following our truth, we put into place, the clarity of the future, that we can actually be very content in the present. But it does require, I think, this attention that you've both highlighted. So I really appreciate these reflections. So I'm going to hand over maybe to Ash, if you're happy to share maybe for 2-3 minutes, any some guided reflections from yourself, and to sort of finish up.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Ioana, for this evening. It's been a lovely conversation to have. Okay, so maybe we can just start by just taking a deep breath in and then releasing completely. Just turn your attention now to the center of your forehead. Just recognize the sparkle, the jewel of light between the eyes. And as this awareness strengthens, there is a feeling of peace and quietness. And connected to yourself. And instantly, I experience my true nature, one of peace. And as I experience this inner quietness, there is a space to observe, a space to detach, to see everything inside without judgment, but with kindness. with acceptance from a higher mental position. I'm able to reframe or release situations, thoughts, and any negative feelings that no longer belong in this space of peace. And I protect this peace, knowing that from this basis, I can see everything with truth, with an awakened conscience and an open heart. And as I bring this awareness into the present moment, I have to do nothing. I simply attract with the vibrations that I create. These deep feelings guide my thinking, guide my relationships, guide my actions on the basis of truth. Om Shanti. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much once again for Ioana and Ash for the sharing, and to everyone for your participation and translation team. We will be reflecting on this, I think. It's much appreciated, the sharings, especially the methods to release the past feelings and help us move forward. And yeah, for planting the seeds for this future and that creation that we all have in our hands. So look forward to next time. And I'm going to share on the screen. This is the talk in a couple of weeks. We'll be welcoming John McConnell from London and Patricia from Paris. So we look forward to this chance and look forward to connecting again with you, Ash and Ioana. See you next time.
Likewise, Sarah. Thank you all. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Ioana. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.